So recently I shared a video and I called out toxic masculinity in the heat of the moment. And then, people started calling me out. Quite a few people started calling me out. And to start with, it wasn't easy to digest at all. And of course the ego was like, no, that's right. And I could have easily stuck with that and rejected their truths. I could have easily stayed with the ego's defensive nature. But I sat with it. And I sat with the word toxic masculinity until I realised that actually, they're right. That phrase, toxic masculinity, well, it's become a bit of a buzzword, and that's what everyone kept saying. And I didn't really realise at the time that it just came so easily flowing out of my mouth. But afterwards, well, like I said, I sat with it, and I sat with the impact of the word. I realised that although the impact of this conditioning and kind of behaviour, I suppose, can be extremely harmful to society, the actual word toxic itself is really shaming, extremely shaming. And especially for men who are only just beginning on understanding and exploring their inner worlds, their inner minds, and growth and transformation. The word toxic can definitely wrongly imply that masculinity isn't divine, isn't sacred, something that is actually needed in this world. And that's where it's wrong, I guess. The term toxic masculinity certainly does not mean masculine energy is toxic, but I can completely see how people, or that's what people kind of hear when they hear that phrase. This misuse of language and the kind of shame that is invoked doesn't create healing at all. It creates shutdown, it creates division, and that's not what is needed. That's not what we're trying to achieve, I suppose. Masculine energy is divine and necessary, woven into everything in this world, every single aspect, as is the feminine energy. And the problem is these behaviors, these conditioning patterns that people often relate to as toxic masculinity are kind of what we've inherited from many generations. They are, I guess, the problem, or they are a problem to our society because they cause us harm and suffering, and to live with much kind of dis-ease within society, not just personally but collectively. We live with it in the body and the mind, individually and collectively. So we definitely need to address this behaviour, but we need a word to use so that we can talk about it and so that we can understand it, but one that is rooted in love and growth, not a word that is rooted in fear, shaming and blaming. So I hold my hands up and I apologise for using that word. I understand it doesn't cause unity, and that's what I'm here for. We need unity. So I sat and thought, okay, what could we do? And I thought, well, actually, we need a new frame. We need something where we can address these specific behaviours collectively, because that's what they are, without causing more damage, more division within society. So then I thought, well, this behaviour is not toxic, it's conditioned. It's conditioned masculinity. It's conditioned femininity. And if you're still like, what are you talking about? Stay with me, because I'm going to break it down and explain to you exactly how we got here and how we can get out of here as well. Because that's the thing. This isn't about blame. This is not about us saying, it's your fault. It's about the systems that we have all inherited and that we are all a part of. The thing is, systems and world events trained us, all of us, men and women, everyone to disconnect, I guess, from our true selves. That's the society that we live in. And if you're still like, oh, what are you talking about? Let's rewind. Let's go way, way back so that I can explain what we're talking about, what these phrases or these former buzzwords actually mean, so that people can start to, I suppose, drop the guard. It's not about blame. It's not personal. This is collective. And this is when we refer to toxic masculinity, which we're now going to say conditioned masculinity, we can learn about it, so then it becomes healing. Now, let's go back to ancient and prehistoric time. I'm talking like 3,000 years BC, 3,000 years before Christ. That's like 5,000 years ago. Well, back in those times, men and women, they kind of, I guess, lived in egalitarian tribes. Roles were based on survival, not on hierarchy. And this was good because it meant that expression of emotion, intuition, and sensitivity in men was normal, even celebrated, sacred. Then we had the rise of the empire, I guess, and wars starting. Wars going up to from about 3000 BCE to around about 15,000 years CE, so 15,000 years after Christ. The empires kind of needed soldiers, not sensitive men. So there was this shift. Masculinity became about protection, yes, but also domination. Emotional expression suddenly became seen as a weakness. And this started to shift the masculines within our society. Then we had the Industrial Revolution, I think 1760 to 1840. And this suddenly, men were now removed from the land, from their lineage, from families, from communities, and they were placed into factories. Worth became tied to productivity, not presence. So now we started to have an era where fathers were absent, and emotional modelling, well, it kind of disappeared completely. Now let's go right forwards to the post-war 20th century. And this is where the strong, silent type emerged. This is where we are still living the repercussions of it, because vulnerability suddenly equaled feminine. You can't be vulnerable if you're a man. It was dangerous. The patriarchy taught men to seek control and not connection. It's control things, power, power, power. And now if we actually dissect it kind of say 3 generations ago, our more sort of in immediate history, well, 3 generations ago, many men were forged in the fires of war. You know, their fathers came home from horrific scenarios, and they were silent, and they were hardened, and they were emotionally unavailable from tragedies like the terror of World War I. Vulnerability was weakness completely then. Emotions were dangerous, and survival was the only goal. And that was passed down. So then we go to 2 generations ago, and those sons, they became fathers, and they became fathers themselves, but they didn't know how to nurture because they'd not been taught it themselves. They only knew how to provide. Now, this was not their fault. This is not about blame. Their fathers hadn't shown them. Remember, we're not blaming here. We're just looking at history and how we've got to where we are right now. Success replaced intimacy. Dominance replaced connection. You know, and in many relationships, in many households, love, well, it came with pressure. It came with violence. This wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't that long ago. Even when you think it wasn't that long ago that the cane was used in schools, we're still living the repercussions of this. And all of that stuff was accepted. So then let's fast forward to one generation ago, where men were told, man up, don't cry, get the girl, boy, you've got to be the rock, you've got to be the man of the house, you've got to be the provider, you've got to be the winner, you've got to be the protector. All society did was teach these men that they can't feel, just perform. They were not taught that they were human beings with emotions and that they were safe to also struggle. So now, where are we? Well, now we're in a situation where collectively, remember, this is not about individual men, but collectively, men are living in nervous systems that don't feel safe to soften. And that's not because they're doing something wrong or they're bad or masculinity is toxic. It's not because of that at all. It's because they just weren't shown. They were trained for wars and survival, not for connection and family, community. Masculinity, collective masculinity has been conditioned through the ages through fear through generations. The collective masculine became disregarded, not through anything that they did other than the history that they emerged from. So this is what toxic masculinity is referring to, but I'm now going to call it conditioned masculinity because it creates us now being in a situation where the modern day we find that many men, of course not all, but many men are emotionally isolated, praised for suppression and punished for softness. This has become the norm, and this is not good for our society as a whole. Conditioned masculinity became a cage in which the man evolved. Now let's keep it fair and look at the story of women, because women have also been given a conditioned femininity cage in which they have evolved. This exists too, toxic femininity, conditioned femininity now. And I can tell you, you can bet it is as damaging as the masculine behaviours. This is not about one being better than the other or anything like that. This is about us all taking accountability of who we are and where we are as a society so we can do better. So let's again go back to prehistoric cultures, way back, where there were matriarchal and kind of goddess honouring. Again, let's look 3,000 years before Christ. These societies existed where women's cycles and their intuition and creation were revered. They were honoured and sacred. And then we had the rise of patriarchy. And we're looking around about the years 3000 BCE onwards, basically. But as we had the rise of patriarchy, women were now labelled as property. We were labelled as possessions, temptresses, or even saints. That's it. Our wisdom became threatening to, I suppose, systems of power. And this is when we saw things like the witch hunts, where over 60,000 women were killed for their intuition, for their independence. And then we can move into things like the Victorian era. And during the Victorian era, women were seen as obedient, as meek, as quiet, as obedient, that's all I want to say, I guess, as ornamental. And this is where women's expression became hysteria. Female pleasure was erased. And then we had the 20th century media boom. So now we're into the 20th century and adverts on telly and things like that taught women to shrink, to smile and to serve. Beauty standards became a form of control, basically, in the sense that these kind of mechanisms rose up. We had things like feminism rise up, but it was often met with mockery or even with resistance. And again, maybe it didn't rise up from a place of love, maybe it came from a place of fear, or resentment. And that's okay. Again, back then the women were doing what they could. It missed the mark for some people. And that's now where we get this impression that all feminists kind of hate men. No, they don't. The point is collectively women within society learn to overfunction and under express and under receive. Women were taught to be small, to be palatable, to people please. And now we see it in society, don't we? We were taught to adapt ourselves out of existence and survival again. So then when we come to kind of our modern day generations, let's go back, say 3 generations ago, that's when we see that many of our grandmothers actually had no voice at all. They survived, I suppose, patriarchy through obedience, not through freedom. And then we go to 2 generations ago, and this is where women entered the workplace. Women suddenly became equal. But it wasn't, was it? Because suddenly, or often, women had to abandon their feminine softness to be taken seriously. Women had to show their power, and it became performance. Their worth became about what they could do, what they could achieve. And then 1 generation ago, this generation, I guess, we're kind of told to be independent, but we're still praised for being good girls, for being pleasing. So we're still conditioned to make ourselves softer, smaller, more pleasing, more accommodating. And this is the toxic femininity. Now, it doesn't come out like that. It comes out in aggression and rage for women, because women learn to mold ourselves to survive. And then the ego rises up to survive love. Just as men learned to survive themselves, to suppress themselves in the world, to survive the world. Now, I completely get that this feels like I'm stereotyping. And of course, yes, I guess I am. But on the surface level, that is maybe what it appears. But the truth is, if we have grown up in this society, in this system, and we've identified as either a man or a woman, then we cannot have escaped growing up within these cages, within these constraints. Unless we've done the deep inner work to undo this and unlearn it, we are conditioned. And we are not conditioned just because we want to be, or because of our individual circumstances, or because of what our parents did. It's not about individual. This is because of the collective society and how history has played out. Society in which we have existed and have evolved. And if you've grown up within it, you've not got out of it unless you've done the work to unpack it. So when I previously in my video said toxic masculinity, this is what I was referring to. And of course, now I see it should be called conditioned masculinity. It was wrong. I own that. I take accountability. I see that the word is divisive, and it will not help men to feel that it's safe for them to explore healing, for them to be. It's not toxic masculinity or femininity that's the problem. It's conditioned. And this is kind of what I mean. We were trained into these roles. And that's okay. It's not our fault. None of this is our fault. Nor is it our parents' fault. It's just lineage. It's just heritage. It's just ancestral. And denying it, well, it's not going to help us undo it. And if we want to undo it, we have to take responsibility for what we continue to pass on. Not just in our children, but everywhere. The thing is, toxic masculinity might name a behaviour, a pattern within society, but it definitely does not invite a solution at all. It can actually alienate the very people that we need to be on board and to be included in these conversations. It can shame the very people that and the very hearts that we're trying to help and heal and open. So I invite you, like me, to start using a different term from now on. conditioned masculinity and conditioned femininity. Because none of us were born this way, we were taught it. Think of it this way. If I was driving down the road in my car and I had an oil leak, and the oil was dripping onto the road and it was making the road slippy, and there were motorcyclists and cyclists and cars slipping all over, and it was also dripping off into the rivers and the local environment, making it obviously polluted, and obviously it's really not very good. Not to mention the fact that my car is starting to run not very well because I'm running out of oil. Well, this oil leak that we're talking about, this leak that is seeping out onto the road and affecting everything around it, I have two options, don't I? I can either keep driving down the road being like, it's not my car, it's not my problem, it's not harming me, oh my God, I can't believe that you're saying that it's my car that's leaking, completely oblivious or in denial of the damage and harm that I'm actually causing all around me. Or I can say, maybe I've got an oil leak. Maybe it's not bad, maybe I don't have one at all, but maybe I need to get out of my car and take a look. Maybe I need to pull the car over and actually see if my car is leaking or not. See if there's oil dripping out all over the road. And if there is oil dripping out all over the road, then I need to get to a garage and I need to fix it. I need to repair it. And it's exactly the same thing when we look at our inherited patterns from society, from our parents, from whoever it is that's raised us and that we've grown up within. This is the thing, when we use phrases like toxic masculinity, I get it, it doesn't invite us and allow men to soften into the understanding that it is safe for them to get out of their car and check if they've got an oil leak. But if you are in this world, then you are driving in a car, you have been conditioned within society. So I'm inviting you now to get out the car and check if there's an oil leak. Now, I've offered one solution today, and that is us actually using a different word, using our language more effectively to address these systemic behaviours and patterns that we all live in. Conditioned masculinity, conditioned femininity. And I've shown you also how we've got here, that it's not a personal thing, that it's got nothing to do with being manly or anything. But I'd also like to show you how we can work our way back, how we can find our way back into a society that honours women and men. Because these patterns, well, they're not personal, they are generational. And they're learnt behaviours. So we can unlearn them as well. And it's important that we do this, because unless we bring them to light, then we unknowingly are passing on all of these conditioned patterns and behaviours, this conditioned trauma. We're passing them on in our parenting, we're passing them on when we're dating, we're passing them on in the workplace, we're passing them on in our friendships. Masculine energy isn't toxic. Feminine energy isn't weak. And that's the thing. When either of our energies within us become disconnected from the truth, well, both become distorted. And then we walk around this world relating from our wounds instead of our wisdom. And this is the miracle that I want to share with you. This is the most incredible thing about being a human, is that we can unlearn all of this. We're the first generation with the tools to heal this, to be aware and to tackle it. Using the correct language, we can reparent the masculine, not to shame him, no, to reclaim the sacredness of his power. We can reclaim the feminine, not to perform her, but to embody and feel her presence and softness. The conscious masculine walking the earth is not afraid to feel their emotions. He holds presence, not power. He protects without controlling, and he leads with integrity. That's the world I want to see. They're the kind of men that we're calling in. And the liberated feminine is not afraid to take up space. She softens without shrinking. She feels without apologizing. She receives without guilt. She speaks with devotion. Imagine a society where people walking around related and resonated with this. And when those two come together, in anybody, whether it's within ourselves or within relationship, that is sacred. Ugh, so sacred. That is sacred union. This is not a gender war, not hierarchy, not performance. This is wholeness. This is healing. This is liberation. So, how can we actually get here? As individuals, I guess, because it might be a collective problem, but we all can start with ourselves. We can begin individually together. And we begin individually in the body. We begin with the nervous system. We begin by meeting ourselves, meeting our fear of intimacy, our fear of rejection, our fear of being fully seen, fully heard. We meet it all with compassion. We begin with accountability, owning it, being honest with ourselves, owning our mistakes and our own conditioning, our responsibilities, and we start making amends. We start to honour ourselves. Men, I honour you. You were never taught how to feel, and yet here you are showing up and trying. I see that, and that is divine. Don't stop just because of a buzzword. And women, I see you too. You were told that you're too much. You were told that your softness made you weak, and yet you keep rising with tenderness, with power. That's beautiful. And to all of us, we are not broken. We were born into a system, a broken system. But we have the power right now to unlearn it. We have the tools that we need, not by becoming someone else, no, but by remembering who we were before the world told us what we should be. This isn't just about men and women. No, not at all. This is about the collective. This is about us returning to balance. This is about healing not just our relationships, but our society as a whole, the world. Because the future isn't feminine. The future isn't masculine. The future is united. And it begins with us.